I wouldn't say our heads exploded, but came close when the legislature did not want to vote on whether or not people could drive their car to work on any particular day, and instead had the rulemaking process take over. Our heads kind of exploded, and we defeated that last year. We've now defeated that bill again this year that would have mandated. And my point there was always like, look, if legislators want to tell individuals what day they can drive their car and how far and to what, then they should just do that through statute in front of everybody as a part of a big public discourse, and let them vote on that. And then let's have the governor either sign or not sign that bill. But to try to do that through rulemaking and for make businesses be the policeman on who can drive to work that day, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know it's one of the oldest institutions in Denver. I still don't know why anyone would want to have this job. J.J. Ament, now the president of the Denver Chamber of Commerce. Now, before this, you had some respectable jobs.
Thanks. Well, I love the job I have now too.
Remind us what.
Yeah.
What
so
you did
I
before.
spent, very beginning of my career as an entrepreneur, ran a couple of companies, did a short stint at the chamber as the head of public affairs back when Governor Owens had taken office, and then left for my real career, which was in investment banking. Traveled the country financing lots of public-private partnerships, and then finished that career. It was great. Glad to have done it.
Can I?
Yeah.
Just because I'm old. Let's talk about your old man for a minute.
Yeah.
Your father
guy.
is quite a Colorado institution.
Yeah.
I mean, he put a lot of years into public service. And how long was he in the legislature?
Yeah, so 8 years in the legislature, or 8 in the Senate, a couple in the House, and then 8 years of Governor Owens as the Commissioner of Agriculture. And still serves on a number of water boards. Started when I was little as a member of the local school board in Sterling, and then when started his career as president of the Colorado Association of School Boards back then, and then the chair of the State Board of Education, and a good guy, a real champion for rural Colorado and agriculture.
I think we really miss that now. I mean, Don had that, was a steady hand, I think, in all the things he did. And so I kind of miss that. And he also had the ability, and I say this as a complete insult to him, he could work well with the other side and bring people together. I remember that pretty well.
There was a lot more of that back then, too.
It wasn't as polarized, and the rural areas were not despised by the city center the way it is now.
Right, and I think it's the difference between how people think and how policymakers sometimes think. The urban-rural divide issues are significant and real. Because we're the Metro Denver Chamber, we include 9 counties, which one of those is Weld, a huge number, one of the top 10 agricultural producing counties in America. The other 9 are all in California. So it's really important to us as the chamber that we have a balanced approach, that we try to mend divides when they occur.
Well, it's tough because you have
tough.
the Boulder-Denver corridor that voted to parachute killer wolves into somebody else's backyard.
Sure, of course.
It's like, this has nothing to do with me. It's not going to ruin my life or my livestock or anything like that.
Yeah, but we absolutely oppose that and try to help lead the charge to defeat that, because to exact your point, it's not going to be my backyard in Arapahoe County where these wolves are introduced, nor are they going to destroy my pet or my livestock or my livelihood. But go to Routt County, Rio Blanco County, and it's a totally different story. And we need to start thinking about Colorado as one Colorado, because when we're promoting the state around the nation and around the world, we're not just showing pictures of downtown Denver. We're showing pictures of all of Colorado.
And I think growing up here, there was always a respect for all of Colorado, the rural areas, because Denver was always called a cow town, which meant, the stock show was a, big deal because it was a cow town, that a lot of the businesses in Denver served rural areas, including energy. And in the 80s, where oil and gas was the driver, so there was a connection between the guys in Denver and the guys out there. And I really do miss it. You guys still are involved with the stock show.
Sure, absolutely. Hugely important. The Super Bowl of livestock. People forget.
Explain that.
Well,
because I don't think people quite get it, that this, it's kind of, people see it as a tribute to cowboys or cruelty to animals or, look what they're doing, that's weird. But the stock show's roots was this is an economic event. This is not.
Absolutely.
This was not rodeos. This was business.
Yep, and the chamber helped start it over 100 years ago. We have now just announced a $250,000 gift to the National Western to put a marker on the spot with a flagpole of where the president of the chamber convened the very first stock show, and had the Burlington Northern Railroad make a special trip from downtown clear out to the stock show grounds at I-70 in Brighton. For a nickel or a quarter, you could ride the train out.
You guys gave him $250,000 to put up a flagpole?
Yeah. We gave him $250,000 to support the stock show, and we're going to get a flagpole as well.
Oh, well, because I was going to say, we could.
Bonus. But I think it's
we'll
important to recognize that history. Yeah. 4 of our top 10 global exports are agricultural products. So where we're known around the world in terms of export markets, it's primarily livestock in Colorado. That and computer chips, aerospace. So that's what folks know us for, and it hasn't gotten any smaller as an industry.
And oil and gas and mining,
energy production,
livestock, right?
Absolutely, hugely important.
Let's bring it to the Denver
and
Metro.
Tens of millions of dollars changes hands go out to the yards, and you'll see livestock sales and genetics and all kinds of innovation, and it's stunning the technology.
Do you think? Let me ask you 2 questions.
At stock show,
I want to get to the chamber, but on the stock show and where it is now, do you think it stays there?
Yep.
The last year, the voters did not vote to bond money to spruce it up, to do these things with it. You think it stays where it is? It doesn't move to Aurora? It doesn't do something else?
For sure. So more than $1 billion is being invested there. 3 brand new buildings for Colorado State University and Denver Water are coming online. It is going to be a uniquely positioned asset in the world. So that's happening regardless of the bond vote on whether or not the taxpayers will finance a new arena on that site. The rest of the project has already been approved and is being constructed. So yes, and I think we can go back to the drawing table and find a way that's more suitable to the Denver voter, although I think that there was a lot of confusion in that particular campaign of what the election was actually for. But yeah, stock show, the decision to keep stock show where it is and to make the needed investments has already been made, and that's happening right now. In fact, we've already opened one of the CSU buildings, and the Ron Williams yards are open, and the new Livestock Events Center is already there. It's gorgeous.
All right. Does the stock show survive? And what I mean by this is we've got the governor's husband, who's an activist, animal rights activist. We had Ellen Kessler on the veterinarian board. Now we've got somebody else on the ag board. And their stated purpose is to destroy the ranching industry. They want to end people's ability to eat meat. And let's say rodeos have gone out of favor in a hipster man bun kind of town like Denver now. I wonder if in 20 years it becomes politically incorrect.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Let's put it down there.
We can't let that happen. And I think the chamber knows that agriculture and livestock and beverage production is one of our 9 key industries that we focus on as the Metro Denver Chamber.
I'm not talking about that.
We will keep that going.
I am talking about people screaming that it needs to be canceled because it's cruel.
But likewise, we have never in this state until recently, as it relates to energy, picked on one particular of our industry clusters and had antagonistic public policy.
We're doing that right now.
That's what I said. Until now on energy, we haven't ever done that where we've
and ranching. And
agriculture is coming into that mix too. Right. And we can't let that happen. It is how we create the Colorado that people know and love. And I do think that there were almost 700,000 people that came to Stock Show this year from the region and around the world, literally. So I think we maintain that. I think we have to do our job as a Chamber of Commerce to remind people, and that's part of the reason we made the investment in the Stock Show, that agriculture and production agriculture is a critical and essential part of Colorado's economy. And we want to keep it that way. It's also a part of who we are and our Western heritage, and that's also very important to us. So I think it does stay. But I think we do have to be aware that it's a competitive marketplace just like everything else, and the more antagonistic we are, the more regulatorily burdens that we put on those industries, the more likely they are to be attracted to Utah, Oklahoma, Texas, or other competitive states.
Although it's hard to move your cattle ranch to some other state. Sure. It's hard to move your drilling permits to some other state.
Agreed. What I meant was Stock Show.
Right.
And the governor of Oklahoma is very aggressive, planned the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Congress over the exact same days as Stock Show, specifically to try to steal. So we need to do a good job of protecting that resource.
Let me get to the Denver Chamber. The Denver Chamber, me personally, the Independence Institute, we have a strained relationship over the year. Matter of fact, I've come to say things like every tax increase, every bad public works project gets bubbled out of the laboratories of the Denver Chamber. That every cronyistic pay-to-play thing happens. Now, let me explain my insult before you do that. And I see it. I saw it when I was on the RTD board. I saw it with what happened with fast tracks, that these unreasonable, ridiculous, and financially devastating things were made there by a mixture of bond dealers and construction guys and Xcel Energy, and it seemed like the meeting ground was always the Denver Chamber. You know, how to put it, the infrastructure envy that infected Denver seemed to come from there. And even just a couple years ago, a massive transportation tax, most of which was going to go to bike lanes and parks and not to roads, came out of those walls. Now, I know that was a different time, but I really do want you to address why is it that, at least in my political life, the Denver Chamber keeps bringing out tax increase after tax increase or fee increase after fee increase, thus avoiding a public vote, instead of what I thought a chamber was supposed to do, which is to help connect businesses, network, and fight for a less regulatory environment so your members can thrive.
Yeah, and that's the part of the chamber that I'm excited about having an opportunity to lead. It's a diverse group, there's no doubt. There's all political representation. It's geographically diverse. It's politically diverse. The boards of those contemplate decisions on ballot issues all the time. Some of them I personally agree with, and some of them we arm wrestle about. But it's a group that has been working for the benefit of Colorado's economy for 9 years longer than Colorado has been a state.
Benefit of Colorado's economy.
Yes.
All right, I'll push back on that, because when I see things like, Siemens Corporation donates $200,000 to the campaign to pass fast tracks, and then gets a $58 million contract a few months later, that sure doesn't look like an investment. That looks more like pay-to-play.
Yeah, and I'm probably not familiar well enough to comment, although I can tell you that Siemens isn't a member of the Denver Metro Chamber, so maybe I'm falling down on that.
You want me to talk about the members from Xcel to all the other companies?
There are thousands of members of the Denver Chamber, thousands of locations, 400,000 people in Colorado employed by Chamber members. So it's a diverse group, and what I can assure you, since I wasn't there during the debates that you're talking about, what I can assure you is that those debates are robust. There are some 500 different board members coming from all
500 board members
between the economic development corporations, our leadership foundation, our Prosper Colorado.
I'm getting this god awful, United Nations vibe.
It's well organized. No, it's good, and I tell you
that there's got to be a core committee, a core group of movers and shakers.
Ultimately, the Chamber of Commerce boards about 60 business representatives from small businesses up to enterprise level companies. So from folks that are running construction companies might have 10, 15 employees, but 85% of the Chamber's membership have 50 or fewer employees. It really is a small business organization. The enterprise level companies like Xcel, VF Corporation, US Bank, Wells Fargo, they're all at the table as well. It really is a really diverse group. And when you can marshal them to agree on a particular piece of public policy, whether they're for it or against it, it can be a meaningful and powerful group in the state. And that's the role I'd like to see it play. And I do think one of the things that might go to the heart of what you're talking about, at least philosophically, is that I really think the Chamber has a role to play right now on restoring the community's confidence and support in the free enterprise system. Because I do think it's at risk. And I try not to be hyperbolic about that, but I think we do have a role to play in reminding our community of why free enterprise is so powerful, why democratic capitalism delivers better than other systems around the world. Because some of the public policy that you're talking about is not aligned always with that. And I think the Chamber has a really important role to play.
And by the way, I wish you the best in that. I couldn't agree. I want to partner with you on that. Or if it helps you, I'll just say bad things about you, and that might help you even better. But I think the Denver Chamber also has a reputation, in my point of view, to rebuild. That this is not a center for cronyism, but this is a center to unleash the free marketplace and get government out of the way so your members can thrive. And I see a real difference there, and it seems as though for decades that organization pushed public works projects and pieces of legislation that were not necessarily to alleviate the burdens of government. It was to give more power and money to government.
Yeah, I think that when the business community, though, through the chamber, which again is geographically and politically diverse, they may just not agree on every one of those issues. I go back and point to the things that I think of as like the airport. The airport wouldn't have been there but for the work of the Denver Metro Chamber and the Metro Denver Economic Development Corp, and it's an essential asset for our community. It's the single largest economic contributor we have. Essential. Do we always agree with every decision that's made at the airport? No. But it's essential that we have it, and by and large, on balance, we think it's it's not even on balance, it's a hugely important asset. We're big supporters of making sure that it gets done. So there are projects like that. Transportation around the region, the Chamber started as a transportation organization. It's who built the rail line to connect Denver to Cheyenne on the Transcontinental Railroad. That was the beginning of the Chamber of Commerce. So transportation, as always, I share your concern. We've invested in airports. We've invested in transit. We need to build some roads. And we need to build some roads. And I think local communities may have different evaluations of what they may need to have mobility in their region, but we do need to build roads.
All right. I could beat you up all day long for what your forefathers did. But
well, it's 155 years old, so over that course of time, I'm sure there are areas where we've agreed and disagreed. But we'll work on from here forward.
25 years.
We'll go from here forward.
All right, talk about from here forward. There is a sense of, how to put it, not just Denver, the whole state being on the precipice of, in my point of view, a point of no return when it comes to a command and control regulatory state. We see what goes on in California. Californians are vacating because businesses are vacating. Elon Musk is vacating. They're going to low tax states. They're going to Florida. They're going to Texas. They're going to Wyoming. And what's sad about this is the policies that California put in took decades to build into what they are. I kind of feel that Colorado is where California was in the mid-'60s, late 60s maybe, where, there's so much margin for growth. We got plenty of sunshine and skiing and resources, and we got hipsters bars and cannabis, and we got concerts. It's just a hip place. And so a little extra this, a little extra that. We have enough that we can pay for that now. But these programs, these regulations are going to be business killers. The Family Leave Act, what we're doing to the oil and gas industry, what the new activist-empowered Air Quality Control Commission is going to be empowered to take people out of their cars by gunpoint. You've got regulations right down to you can't give your customer a container to give us their food home.
Ketchup or mustard.
Right, and those things, we might be able to have enough economic activity that it doesn't hurt us right now. The people who are putting in these policies will not be there in a decade when these policies are crippling our state.
Yeah. So I was on the job for about 30 days when I testified before the Economic Development Recovery Group of legislators and reminded them that in just the 2 years since they had assumed office, Colorado had dropped from the 11th to the 29th most business-friendly state in CNBC's
Say that again.
Yeah. So in CNBC's best states to do business, we had dropped from 11th to 29th in just one cycle of their survey, which spanned COVID so that they wouldn't be, so the study wouldn't be influenced by the pandemic. That's significant, got attention. Within an hour, I had calls from the Capitol building saying, well, tell us more about that, and well, how's that coming? We run the Economic Development Corporation for the region, a regional effort, collaborative effort, really unique in the country and the nation and the world of how we do economic development. And we're starting to hear from more and more from CEOs and from site selection professionals who are advising those CEOs that, hey, where is Colorado headed? Not where are you now, but where are you headed? Because I'm already in California. And that's not something that we heard 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And what we try to remind policymakers is that the complacency that can come from having it so good for so long as we have is leading you to believe that the policy decisions you're making today are what's creating the environment you're experiencing today. That's not true. The success we've had in economics in Colorado is because of policy decisions made 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. And the decisions they're making today that are showing up now in data and dropping us in those rankings are really going to take place 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. And we've actually been able to show it. For example, we were strong. Look, every member of the chamber has a family and medical leave. We tried to find a company in the building that didn't offer some sort of family and medical leave. Couldn't do it. So we were strongly opposed to what the state did on the ballot initiative around family and medical leave.
But I was surprised that both on family medical leave, I'm not saying you guys didn't take a position against it, but I was surprised that Casey, now called Colorado Chamber, Denver Metro Chamber, the restaurant associations, that I will editorialize, were AWOL during this fight. That there wasn't a massive, this is a life or death issue for businesses, particularly businesses that have retail, that have people, servers that are. This new law is going to cripple us, as you said, in the future.
Yeah, it's
I was surprised how
anything that's a tax on employment,
how business wasn't really.
Well, I think
engaged.
business was there, but we were overwhelmed by our folks from the East Coast who were dumping $9 million into the state to pass the ballot initiative, and it's really challenging when we're here. Even it's difficult enough to condense it into how we could say it on a television show. That most people already offer a benefit that's as good or better than what the government's offering. It's more secure. It will be there when you actually want it. That's tough when you're running a ballot initiative where folks come out of town and say, "Well, who wouldn't want family and medical leave?" But let me finish the thought.
Let me see if I can kick back what you said, because I think I really agree. Which is, businesses are always looking forward. They don't look backwards, or they don't look here. They say, "Wait a second. If it's going to take me 3 years or 2 years to build up my business there, to make the warehouses and to build all the things, where are we going to be then in 10 years? What are the property taxes? What are the income taxes? What are the regulatory thing?" And so it doesn't surprise me at all that we dropped to 29th in business competitiveness, because if you're going to start any business, you'd be nuts to start a business in California 10, 20 years ago. And nobody wants to do that now. And that type of policy certainty is crucial.
Yeah, stability, predictability, huge issues for business. I mean, I won't go as far as say you shouldn't start a business in Colorado. I still think Colorado is one of the best places in America to do business.
Yeah, it's your job to say that.
And so we are seeing talent is making those decisions. So the first on every decision on where I should grow my company is, where can I find talent? And Colorado still does well there. As long as we can remain a place that people want to be, talented and skilled workers.
Well, because Colorado is beautiful, because we have amenities, because we have lifestyle. But when it comes to the point where if you live here, thanks to the law that Polis signed, you can't get hired as a teleworker someplace else.
That was the finish of the thought. So what we're seeing is a transition of power sometimes from a legislature. Colorado is a pretty strong legislature relative to the governor, to the executive branch. And so on pay equity, and again, we're completely for equal pay for equal work. Men and women doing the same job should be paid the same, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity. That is a value of ours.
But not the
Italians. But that's our value. So pay equity we support. But the 2 years of rulemaking that followed pay equity out of the public view in the department came up with rules that were so beyond what the statute contemplated, and it generated the headline that you're remembering in the Wall Street Journal, which was the number one read article in the Wall Street Journal that day, that remote workers were wanted everywhere except Colorado. So I could spend my entire marketing budget trying to overcome the damage of that headline. But I won't do it. I won't be successful.
Because it's true.
But working through those rulemaking processes and trying to move back to the legislature and to the statutory process, all of these details that we tried to point out in advance is really important. We're still, 2 years later, we're still working on fixing that rule, because who's that impacting most? Stay-at-home moms. women who want to work from home and also take care of a family. So those are the folks being most impaired when the law was purported to be designed to help them most. So that's the kind of detail and the significant impact rulemaking can have even beyond the legislative process. And again, 2 years into it, we're still trying to fix that problem.
And rulemaking, people don't quite get this. We see it in D.C., we see it here, even more and more in both, that the executive, Polis, puts in his people make rules. Those rules choke government. You see that under Senate Bill 1.
Choke government?
Choke enterprise. You look at Senate Bill 181, we have a new oil and gas commission that's full of people who hate oil and gas industry. They choke it and they make these rules. And it does. It happens behind closed doors, and it happens slowly, methodically.
We want a reasonable regulatory environment, but when a regulator is genuinely antagonistic toward an industry, that's different than being a regulator.
All right, so then that leads to this question. Elections have consequences. Mm-hmm. This governor, without a doubt, has been the most anti-economic governor, in my point of view, out of my lifetime, the governor that will have done the most economic damage to the future of Colorado, bar none. I don't know if you guys can say that because you have to work with him, but seeing what has happened and seeing that even now, so early on in the life of these policies, Colorado's inflation rate is 0.5 point higher than the national average. It's only going to get worse as all these policies finally start to click in. Will the chamber do something to change the executive so that the people in all those rulemaking offices that are choking business change too?
Yeah.
That seems like that is a key part of making Colorado friendly to business again, is to get rid of a governor who's very unfriendly to business, no matter what he tries.
Yeah, so you're putting me on the
himself.
spot. Obviously, the chamber has never, and to my knowledge in the history, and I've been in the role for 5.5 months, gotten involved in individual candidate campaigns. And so I don't think that that's on the table. And I think that there are areas where we've worked with the governor on economic development issues that have been positive for the business community, particularly around innovation and clean tech, which is an important industry here. We've disagreed with him on air quality. We've disagreed on adding FTEs to the Air Quality Commission, strongly disagreed. We're working night and day to fix pay equity. I wouldn't say our heads exploded, but came close when the legislature did not want to vote on whether or not people could drive their car to work on any particular day, and instead had the rulemaking process take over. Our heads kind of exploded, and we defeated that last year. We've now defeated that bill again this year that would have mandated. And my point there was always like, look, if legislators want to tell individuals what day they can drive their car and how far and to what, then they should just do that through statute in front of everybody as a part of a big public discourse and let them vote on that. And then let's have the governor either sign or not sign that bill. But to try to do that through rulemaking and then make businesses be the policeman on who can drive to work that day, that's crazy. So we worked hard on that. So those are the areas where we can engage with this governor. And I think as we show him the results of these policies in data, I found the governor to be receptive. We don't always agree, but when we're able to show him the results of some of these policies in data, I think we've had an opportunity to refine some of them. We're not always successful. There's work to do for sure.
Am I hearing that the chamber will not get involved in trying to get a business-friendly governor to replace him?
I think what you're hearing from the president and CEO of the chamber is that is a decision that's made by the board, not by me as their staff person. And I, looking back in history, would tell you that it would be a unique change for the chamber in its 150-plus history to get involved in individual candidate races.
Although to look at this, given that we just talked about rulemaking goes up to one individual and one individual only. So the chamber can continue to try to have these squabbles with this board and this commission and this board and this commission, this board and this commission, this board and this commission. It sure seems to me that the trunk of that tree is a governor who has empowered the activists on all these boards.
And we're vocal and engaged with the governor. We don't do it through the candidate campaign process, but we are engaged in that every single day to make sure the business is heard and make sure the governor knows the impacts that this is having on our
members. Let me ask you
members.
about a policy then. Mm-hmm. something I've spent a lot of time thinking about is how to contain this contagion of activist rulemaking bodies that just proliferate and grow and choke. And yeah, we don't want the government to have to make every single rule, or the legislature, but shouldn't there be a system? And I don't, again, you'll have to defer to your board, but to have something where all these rules that are that come up have to be voted on by the legislature, so that as the Oil Commission comes up with its final rules and regulations, there be a public vote, so that there's a record that this legislator empowered that to happen. And so when the Ag Board decides to do something, that package goes up to the full legislature for an up and down vote, just so we can say, these are the legislators. Because right now, the only person we can hold accountable is a multimillionaire who can self-finance. We cannot hold 100 different legislators accountable for what his appointees are doing. There's no check and balance there.
Well, I think I would not let it get that far. Again, I think the legislature should reassume its authority in Colorado, the authority that it has, and not empower the executive branch to go as far. And so to what you're doing, I would just do more of the rulemaking process and statute to begin with, so that you don't empower legislature. So you don't say, well, clean up the air. You all make rules to figure out how to do that.
How would you do that, though?
And then they come back. I would just do it in the statute that said, okay, to my point about employee trip reduction, let the legislators vote that you can drive Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but not Tuesdays and Thursdays. You let them vote on that.
You're dreaming, and here's why. Because legislators do not want to be held accountable to those votes. They're not going to vote for statutes that hold them accountable for policies they may well want, but they don't want their hands on.
Yeah, but we should insist on that. That's their job.
In the same way, a governor is not going to sign a bill that disempowers his office to have that authority. It sure seems to me like the only way to do this is going to be through a citizens' initiative that changes some of this around, because that's just not. It's like legislature would never pass Tabor because it tells them they can't spend as much as they want. They'd never pass term limits, and those certainly went up as bills because they're not going to do that. They weren't going to pass a lot of open meetings, open records laws that had to go through the initiative process. It seems to be there could be something here that is not a candidate-specific thing, but a policy-specific thing.
Well, we're concerned about policy for sure. And so when you write that ballot initiative, send it our way.
Yeah, that's the kind of leadership I'm looking for from the Denver Chamber. Hey, thanks for sitting down with me. I got to say, it is really refreshing to be able to have an open and honest dialogue with the Chamber. And you're right, the history of the Chamber is intertwined with the city.
Yeah.
Right down to the very
the whole
first
region
train
and the
tracks.
whole state.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of the board. There are a lot of engaged business people. Again, they run the gamut of politics and ideologies, but they're all committed to making sure that Colorado is a competitive state in which to do business. Their livelihoods depend on it. And so I'm proud to work there. I'm proud to have the opportunity to talk to you and visit about this dialogue and where we can work together to promote free enterprise and capitalism. We're 100% on board.
Let me leave it with this. You're how to put it? There's Elon Musk's wealth, then there's Bezos's wealth, and then you're like maybe a step down here. I mean, my point being, from what I understand, you've done well in the private sector. You could just go off and have a nice life. You could stay in the private sector. You did a lot of work outside of the state and money management and all that other good stuff. What kind of idiot are you to take on this job? I mean, I got to do what I do because I'm unqualified for any other job. If I don't make this scam work, my kids go hungry. Why did you take this job?
I love it. It's anytime you can travel the country and tell people why Colorado's a good place to do business, travel the world and tell people
But you don't have to.
Pretty good job.
You don't have to. What drew you to this?
I don't have to. I think this is an opportunity to take what is the longest continuously operating business in Colorado, which is the Denver Metro Chamber. Again, 9 years before Colorado became a state, this organization was formed. And our mission is to make sure that Colorado is a competitive place to do business, that people here have good jobs, and and that the business landscape and that Colorado as a total community can flourish. So that's a pretty great job. And to get to work with a group of board members who are, again, diverse, come from all parts of the region, all parts of the state, have different points of view, and try to align them around those fundamental issues of free enterprise and democratic capitalism and making sure that everyone is participating in that beats being an investment banker every day.
Is there another story like your wife said, I will divorce you if you don't get out of the damn house?
Nicole and her engagement in her own business career, which is very, very successful, certainly makes it
you're
easier
underfoot.
for me.
You're underfoot. Get out. Go. JJ, thanks so much.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.